All right. Well, hello, Money Club. Thanks for being with us. I'm really, really pleased and excited to be here with one of our millionaire mentors, David Delisle. David has a ton of experience as a financial planner and as an investor in stocks, real estate, business, a variety of different ventures, and has actually just written and released a kid's book, a kid's graphic novel to help teach the next generation about finances. So needless to say, when Aaron and I heard about David's experience, we were itching to get him in here and share his voice. So David, first off, thanks for being with us. It means a lot.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm excited to be here too.
Great, great. Well, yeah, I know you're based in Canada, so we got an international panel here. So I'd like to start off for those of you watching. David has a lot. He's worked as a financial planner and, like I said, a seasoned investor. So we will certainly cover a lot of material on kind of his thoughts about how to divide up your investments. What are the benefits and drawbacks of different asset classes like real estate and stocks and businesses? So we'll certainly get to some of the investing mechanic pieces. But as you all know, we love to start with the why, right, and the social emotional pieces that really underlie our human experience with or in and outside of money. So, David, before we get into your professional background, can you tell me about when it was that you became aware that you wanted to pursue learning about wealth building, learning about personal finance? What really turned that light bulb on for you, and how has that light bulb evolved over time?
Yeah, so mine's a little bit more of a interesting story because it started a lot younger than most people. I mean, I was 10, 11 and really interested into this stuff. And I think it's because I saw how hard my dad was working and not enjoying what he was doing, and realized that there could be another way. And I was noticing that money itself was a tool. So even at that age, I started sort of thinking about, what could it be? What if I saved? How's it compound? All these things. Again, I was 10, so
Yeah.
it seemed amazing at the time, but I really didn't put it in perspective. But I was reading different finance books. I remember reading like Peter Lynch, for example, and he was talking about investing in stocks. At that time, we didn't have the internet, so they put out annual books annually on the top mutual funds and advisors and within those funds and what to be investing. So I really would go through and get into that, but it's always been more of something that's happened in the background as a hobby over the last 30 years.
But like investing, right, and wealth building, it takes tremendous amount of hard work, as I'm sure you know better than I do. Over the years, right, into your teens and early 20s and things like that, what was your driving motivation then? I love your light bulb story when you were 12, but then how did that evolve into, like, I'm sure there were long nights, right, hard weekends of work. What was your motivation then?
Biggest thing for me is it's been pretty simple. It's always been freedom. And so this idea of retirement, but not in the sense of, okay, I have enough money, I never have to work again, and I'm sitting on a beach.
Yeah.
For me, it was that freedom of choice. Like, I love the idea of, look, I can choose a living I want to do. I can choose what I do with my time. I can choose the clients I work with. And so that idea of freedom and pure freedom to really not have money define my choices was a big motivating factor. And more so than anything else, because for me, actual material things never had a ton of value. Yeah. And I think part of that being a young kid, so you're saving and you're trying to invest, I wasn't buying a lot of stuff because I'd always see it as this, $10 toy could be $1,000 in my future. And that's not of interest to me. So.
Yeah, that's very cool. And what do you do now with your time freedom? How do you translate your freedom from having to work the kind of job that your dad did, for example, into a happy life now?
Well, first, just choice. So number one, so I've got two young boys, they're 9 and 12 now. But for me, like, being able to go volunteer at their school, go on a field trip, and just have that complete flexibility of my time is huge. Like that has more value than anything else. So I can end my day to pick them up if I want to. If they're going out on a field trip, I can go and do that. And then as well, we try to do these really fun vacations, again, pre-COVID, but we would do home exchanges. So we'd exchange homes with other people around the world and just travel for a few months with the kids, which was just an amazing adventure. And I could still work, but I chose work where I had the freedom that I could do it remotely. I didn't have to be always on, and can still, travel with the family when they're out of school. So so that was huge for me.
Love that. Love that. Well, we were chatting before we started rolling tape on your graphic novel. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And we were talking about how, in a lot of the financial wealth building content out there, right? A lot of the focus is on more, right? How can I earn? How can I invest? How can I earn more, make more money, do more things, right? But how, like, just as important, right, if not, in my opinion, more important side of the equation is, well, like, how can I control what I want? Like, how can I be happy with what I have? And I think this ties into your early story of, like, well, yeah, it didn't, like, you didn't spend much money when you were younger, and I'm younger, and I also don't spend much money because I don't know, for whatever reason, I don't feel like I need to be happy. So can you kind of take me through your graphic novel and kind of what were some of the revelations that you came up with as you were writing it, researching it, formulating these ideas into what it is today?
Yeah. So the basic revelation outside of that mindset and more was just how much the habit of saving and having that compound is much more important than all these other details around where to invest and what the market's doing and macroeconomics and reading all the finance books I did. I mean, if someone just said, David, do nothing else, just save, put in the stock market and let it just multiply over the next 30 years, in terms of where that would take you, the trajectory is amazing. So that's the habit side of thing. But what really jumped out, like you're talking about this more, I started realizing how much my view on money was different than a lot of the norm. And it could be just because I had sat on it for so long and had it evolve over, childhood into the teens and adulthood. But right now, if the only thing we're taught is how to have more money, which is what we are only taught, then you can never hit a point where you have enough, because all you're taught is how to have more. And so that first lesson is critical. And that's, what's really important to you. So in the book, I talk about the awesome stuff. So what's your awesome stuff? And have children thinking about their awesome stuff. And it can be different for everybody. Like, that's the beauty of it. There's no judgment in it. Everybody's awesome stuff's going to be different. But what's really amazing is when you start thinking about what your awesome stuff is and noticing it around you, you'll notice that you start to perceive your things a little bit differently, because you'll start realizing things that maybe you thought were awesome don't bring you that much joy, or it's fleeting. And then you start to land on, that, like I mentioned, going and volunteering at my kid's school or vacationing, like watching the family and having the freedom to do that for sure is my awesome stuff. Someone else, it could be, an heirloom from their, little grandmother, and that object, that thing, every time they see it, it just brings them joy. So everyone's got different awesome stuff. But once you start realizing that, then everything else that's not your awesome stuff becomes less important. Yeah. So then when you're looking for the more, it's not this endless pit of more. It's what's really important to you, and focusing on that.
I love that. Very cool. I love that. Okay. So let's take a detour into real estate, because I know that real estate as an investment vehicle was a big part of what has allowed you to build financial freedom in your life. So can you teach me, or can you tell me and us what got you into real estate, and kind of, maybe bird's eye view of how you speak to new people that are maybe come to you saying, I want to learn more about real estate. Where do you recommend I start?
Yeah. Real estate's interesting in that there's a lot of different ways people make money in real estate. There's, the buy and hold, there's rental properties, there's, fixer uppers and flips. And a lot of it will be dictated a little bit by just the market you're in itself. If you're in a university town, a rental property is going to make a lot of sense. If you're, in an up and coming neighborhood that's going through change, flipping those properties and fixing them up will make sense. In some cases, I've had, amazing homes that you could fix up, but because of the economics in that area, they were just tearing down homes, even if there's value in them. So the fixer upper didn't work. It was purely land value that was going up, and that was the play. So it does get a little tricky in that sense of how you want to do it. Now, what I would recommend, if you had never touched real estate and you're thinking real estate, you don't even own your own home, I would recommend finding a rental property where you live and have a suite. I mean, that's just an easy way to get into the real estate market with your own place, plus get used to a rental, but you're also right there. You have control over the whole property in terms of, landscaping, fixing it up and maintaining. So you have all those pieces that are going to come anyway from owning your real estate, but then you have some income coming in, and that's going to be a huge indicator of how you even feel about it. I mean, dealing with tenants, is that something you're going to enjoy? Dealing with landscaping, how do you like that? If you want to upgrade your kitchen, is that something that works for you or doesn't? So there's a lot of different ways. And then if none of that works, I mean, you could just invest in, a REIT and get involved in real estate without getting your hands dirty at all. So there's all sorts of options.
Very cool. And you've been in real estate for about 20 years. You've been an investor in real estate?
Yeah, probably more. Yeah, over 20 years now, but yeah, quite a while.
And what got you into it?
For me, I mean, I love the idea of leverage with real estate. I mean, that's the biggest thing. So being able to put in a small amount and owning something worth quite a bit. So that's sort of how I got initially involved. I sort of bought some pre-development condos. So you could get in, you could put a deposit on the condo without actually even having a mortgage or any serious money into it until it developed. And so at that time, the area I was in was going up in value. So being able to hold a place for 2 or 3 years before it was developed and have to put any money in, I was already ahead of the game just with a small deposit. So
very cool.
So that worked well. But there's definitely times sitting inside like a newly purchased home, looking around, no tenants, work to be done, and just thinking, what have I done and how am I going to do this? I mean, it can be stressful, but it's definitely one of the most, in a lot of ways, the safest in sort of traditional, typical ways to earn money. I mean, real estate's always going up, whether it's these huge increases in prices that we've seen recently or just inflation. You're going to keep track with that inflation. Your leverage is going to help you. And then if you can get rental income on top of that to cover your cash flow, I mean, it's hard to beat real estate from just a value perspective.
Yeah, totally. And I'll just clarify just for some of our viewers who might not know what you mean by the leverage piece, like our wealth strategist, Ben Lyons, he also, the way he teaches real estate is similar, where it's like, even if you don't bank on appreciation, property going up, right? It keeps track with inflation at least, but even if you don't bank on, hitting the next, whatever, Denver or San Francisco before it became that, or even if you don't bank on there being cash flow, like even if you can only get into a property where after your expenses and some contingency savings, you're still just breaking even, right? Safely. You still have a tenant paying down your loan, right? So you can get, when you say leverage, you can get financing of, 75, 80, 90, 95%, depending on how you acquire it. And even if the property value doesn't skyrocket, or even if the cash flow isn't putting off $1,000 a month, right, you're still adding to your net worth every month because you can borrow so much on the asset, get in the game with so little, and then essentially have your tenants paying down your loan for you. Is that accurate?
For sure. And I mean, it's a riskier way to go because you do have a mortgage and you've got more skin in the game in the sense of your debts. But just simple math, if you're looking at like $100,000 home and it goes up to $110,000, I mean, you made $10,000 on that, and it sounds like a big a bit of a win, but most people will be like, okay, well,
Sure.
that's not incredible, but it's also not far out of the realm of what's possible. But if that $100,000 home you put 10% down in, so only $10,000,
Right.
that money just doubled.
Doubled. Yeah.
Or if your tenants are bringing in, 5,000 a year, whatever it is, you're getting a 50% return on your investment.
Yeah. Right.
Cash flow wise. So that's where the leverage really changes the whole dynamic. I mean, I'd rather have 10 homes with 10% down than one home with 100% down.
Exactly. Right. And let's weave in stocks, and where I want to go with this is your experience as a financial planner, how you think about, because we get a lot of questions from people about, well, I've got $100,000 to invest. How do I think about breaking it up? Right. Or I'm making an extra, $10,000 a year, but I've got some debts. How do I think about paying down debts versus saving or investing? So that's where I want to take this, but let's start with stocks. How do you think about stocks as like differently from real estate, right? What are the pros and cons of each, and how are they mutually beneficial to each other when you have both of them in your investment portfolio?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing with stocks is the simplicity. So real estate, if I want to sell tomorrow, like selling a house isn't just a quick switch and I just do it. So there's a simplicity. You also don't have to deal with tenants or storms or weather or anything. I mean, it's hands off, which is nice. But again, what I would mention with stocks, and this was something that I sort of learned in a finance course when I was doing business school, which I found interesting, is that when we think of stocks, there's a risk reward in everything that we're buying. But one of the risks is to that individual company. Something wipes out that company or something else within a sector. So one company has that risk to just that individual company. But if you bought all the stocks in that sector, I think the threshold is only like 7 or 10. It's not that many, where all of a sudden that individual risk is diversified in such a way that it almost goes to zero. So now your risk is on the market itself. Are you in a good market or bad market? Is this an industry that's going up or down? But your individual stock risk is gone. So that's where, when people think of like mutual funds or ETFs and basically a collection of stocks, you essentially eliminate that individual risk of an individual stock. So as fun as it is to own Tesla, for example, and I mean, just for fun, I'll invest in Tesla with my boys and show them that. Sure. You are taking on an additional risk that's unnecessary. Yeah. And that's the individual stocks risk. Whereas if you're purchasing, all the cars and, all the stocks in the auto sector, sure, or maybe in, something along with environment and, e-cars and that sector, you're not reliant on, what Elon Musk is going to say today.
Yeah. Yeah. We interviewed a gentleman from the Motley Fool, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And I like the analogy. He said, maybe you can use it future things. He said that, when you're investing in a stock, it's like investing in a single player in the NFL or the NBA, right? Maybe the player will do great, maybe they won't. A mutual fund or an ETF is like investing in a team, right? Like the Baltimore Ravens, less risk than one player, but the Ravens may do well, they may not. And then an index fund like the S&P 500 would be like investing in the entire league to say, okay, I'm going to place a bet that the league is going to, as a whole, become a little bit more successful this year, however you define that. I liked that analogy.
Yeah, no, it's a good analogy. And that's where we get really excited, because we see these individual stocks take off or not, but there's an inherent risk in that you can eliminate.
Yeah.
And so you still have risk with the entire league or the specific team, but you completely eliminated one form of risk, which is injury, for example.
Yeah.
If you're buying a whole team or the league, it doesn't matter who gets injured, you're not taking on that risk.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And well, on the theme of football, we're filming this video 2 days after the Super Bowl, and I couldn't help but notice the number of crypto ads that were on the Super Bowl commercials. where I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl in Canada, maybe not, but there were a lot of crypto commercials, clearly becoming very mainstream, and we get questions on it. I guess just, yeah, again, broad strokes, how do you think about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, maybe in relation to, how are they similar or different than some of these other asset classes? And do you think they deserve a place in people's attention and potentially their portfolio?
For sure. I mean, you just look at most people who are cutting edge and investing and really be active investors. Crypto plays a big part. They've done well with them. A lot of smart people are in crypto. Crypto's here to stay. Yeah. But as we sort of talked a little bit before this call, like me personally, I like to always look at the underlying value in anything. Sure. And that's what we get. I think we've moved away a bit from that because of the internet and the speed of things. We see all this excitement and hype. So people are making money in a lot of ways. Yeah. And it seems so easy that how could I not do the same, or why should I not do the same? So people get very caught up in the hype, and real estate as well. I mean, you can get caught up in the hype. I mean, real estate's gone up quite a bit the last few years with COVID. So my caution would be, when you're looking at any investment, just ask yourself, are you investing in something because you think you can sell it to someone for more? Or are you investing in it because that actually has value, yeah, and you're willing to spend that on that value? Right. So that's where I like to put out that hesitation, just because I think people, when they think of something, they're not like, if you bought Bitcoin, you're not buying it because you think that underlying product has that value. Yeah, you're buying it because you think the price is going up and you can sell it to someone else for more. Sure. Yeah. And so as soon as that's why you're buying something, there's nothing wrong with that investment. Just recognize that your risk you're taking on is at a higher level. So you'll want higher reward, and you'll want less of your portfolio in that. Cool. And so from a diversification and risk management sense regarding investment portfolios at large, is there a way that you generally think about or coach people to break up, say I'm making $10,000 a year in investable income that I have to invest, right? How do you think about how somebody should think about breaking that up, dividing that into some of these big asset classes like stocks, real estate, maybe some of these digital assets like crypto, NFTs, things like that? Well, first off, whether you want to be an active investor or passive. So I'm interested in this stuff. I'm sure you are as well, and a lot of your listeners. So it's very hard not to want to play with crypto or fun asset classes if you're an active investor and want to sort of get your hands dirty and really figure these things out. But the reality is, for most people, it would be better to just get themselves out of the way, just put their money somewhere and forget about it, and not have to play with those details. That habit of just putting it somewhere and letting someone else manage it, in terms of just long-term generational wealth, there's no better way to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think, the fact that Warren Buffett, who most of us think of as, this, world-class investor, his guidance for his estate is, 10% in bonds and cash, and the rest just in a large index fund. Yeah. And that's it. Now, so I totally, and everyone is going to fall in a different place of the spectrum. And I think I just want to echo that sentiment that, even if you don't have the time to invest into learning about investing more, right, there's so much that you can gain by simply getting in the game of just investing. And by that, we mean, right, investing in an index fund, getting in the stock market where you can let those earnings compound. You can do it through a retirement vehicle, even better, because there's tax savings and tax benefits from that. So definitely not investing is not acceptable. Not acceptable if you're listening in. But where I'm going with this is that there are a lot of people that come to us that say, I get the compound interest thing. I get the stock market thing. I get that if I do this for 30 years, right, my wealth will grow much, much larger than it would if I don't. But what if I want to get to that $1 million mark faster, right? What if I want to grow faster than just
what compound interest can do for me over the course of a few decades. What would you say to that?
Well, and that's where a lot of people want to do that. They want to, swing for the fences and see where that gets them. And there's nothing wrong with that, but then there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
So we've met people, I'm sure, in our lives who have swung for the fences and done really well.
Yeah.
And then we met other people who they've been swinging for the fences their whole lives. And, now they're close to retirement and they've run out of that time.
Yeah.
So it depends on where in the spectrum you are. And that's back to, if you're an active investor, swing for the fences, but make it a small part of your portfolio, but have something just growing, because compound interest doesn't feel like a lot. And that's the problem, is when people see it, it grows slowly at first, but it grows faster and faster and faster. So if you think of, the stock market traditionally returning 10%, that feels like a high number. And I'm not saying that's what you should count on, but that's traditionally what the stock market's return. So at 10%, your money's doubling essentially every seven-ish years, maybe 8 years. So now take someone like, a Warren Buffett, like that type of money. A lot of his wealth, it's because of how long he's been investing and how old he is.
Right.
So if you think all that wealth that he's done, and he's made some amazing deals, and he's built this company, he's worked hard, he's done all these things. We all know his name. If he did nothing but had that money in an index fund in the stock market, in 7 years, he would double what he currently has. Mm-hmm. That's the power of compound growth.
Yeah.
Like that's what you have to start imagining. It's incredible how big it gets.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't discount it.
Yeah, no, certainly. And then, what about a middle ground, right? So swinging for the fences is trying to, score big on the next crypto or bet big on the next tech company or whatever it is, right? And the safe long play is just in trying to save, get your habits as tight as possible so you can invest as much as you can in the long play, safe compounding interest index fund or retirement account. Middle ground. What about if somebody says, I want to get there in maybe 15 years, right? I'm not buying penny stocks, right? But I'm looking for something else in the equation too. Certainly real estate comes to mind, but what else? Yeah.
Real estate can be huge because it can leverage. Like real estate will leverage in a big way. And real estate as well, if you've bought real estate in such a way that the cash flow through rent covers your mortgage, even if real estate goes in a downturn, you don't have to get out because you can still float that. Yeah. And that's what I meant by something with underlying value. Like if the dollars still work, there's still value in that home. You can sell that, like it's got value because it doesn't matter what the price of the home goes to, you can still hold that home, make money and make your payments. Yeah. So real estate is great. If you go to like the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, that's a good ratio for all sorts of things. So if you want to put 80% of your money in something safe and 20% something risky, it's a good ratio. Now back to swinging for the fences and this 10%. So I like to recommend that people save 20% of what they earn and just get in the habit of that. And once you're in the habit of that, it'll help keep a cap on lifestyle inflation. You'll quickly get used to it, just like we do with anything. If you're doing 20% saving and it's in that really safe non-crypto 10% stock market, within 17 years, what you're spending every year, what your take home is, will be covered with your investments.
Wow. So I want to echo that 17. So if you save 20%, if you invest 20% in a compounding interest, somewhat like rather reliable stock vehicle, like an index fund, in 17 years, you can expect the interest that you make from the yearly interest you make from your investment nest egg to cover your living expenses.
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool.
And again, play with those numbers, depends on when the money comes in and everything else. But but it's quick. It's
Yeah.
quicker than we think. And so you think of, some of your younger listeners starting their first job in their 20s. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why, again, I mentioned the swinging for the fences, because when I first read all this, I mean, that's the mindset I was in is, instead of making 10%, what if we make 50%? Or what if we leverage? Or what if we do this? And how do I do it faster and faster? But now I'm in my 40s looking back, if I started in my 20s and just did that, I would still be really well off.
Yeah.
Without all the risk and the headache. So
yeah.
I mean, I've done really well off real estate, and I would recommend people take a look at it.
Yeah.
But it's not the only way. And keep in mind too, that Warren Buffett analogy of like 7 years his income will double. If 17, 20 years, you're now able to essentially achieve financial freedom because your living expenses are being covered. If you don't change anything and wait just another 7 years, that will double
again. Yeah.
Again.
Right.
So that's not a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. When I think about your experience as a financial planner, like I said, we get a lot of questions from people who are, who still have debt of some kind, medical debt, credit card debt, student debt. I know, and this will be part of the answer. Not all debts are created equal, but how do you think about if somebody says, I've got $50,000 in debt that I'm trying to pay down, and I want to get in this game, right? I'm listening to this guy, David, and I'm like, man, like I want to get this stock market thing, this or real estate thing rolling, right? So I can start earning those compounding and leveraged benefits. How do you think about how somebody divides up, say they've got to the point where now they're surplusing $1,000 a month? How do you think about how much of that should go to paying down debt versus how much of that should go to saving and investing?
Yeah, so I know there's a lot of differing opinions on this, and I think the reason the differing opinions is just it comes down to mindset. So if you're so the idea of paying off your debt, how that feels in terms of how confident you are in just your wealth. I think that's why there's a focus towards one over the other, or move things in a different way, because there's a feeling associated with having debt, and there's a feeling with being associated with money, making money and investments. But taking out that feeling piece, because that's individual and everyone's going to know what sits right with them. For me, I'm more of a numbers guy. So when I look at it, I want to know, what is my investment going to earn? What's my debt? So when I think of something like mortgage debt, if I'm paying 2%, 3%, even 5%, I'll take on that debt all day long because I feel relatively confident that I can make more than that in the stock market or real estate or somewhere else. But if I'm thinking like credit card debt and it's 10% I'm paying, or 12 or 20% I'm paying, for me to find those returns in a safe, consistent, reliable way is not easy. So I would pay that debt off. For me, it's around 7%, but it depends on where you're sort of sitting. Like I like to think I can earn 7%. If you gave me money, I feel like I could earn 7% and earn on that. 5% for sure. Again, it's going to differ for everybody depending on their risk tolerance and how they invest.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the threshold I look at. So if I was looking at money, like if I could borrow money at under 5%, personally, I'd borrow all day long.
Yeah.
But that would go 1-to-1 to another investment. I wouldn't be borrowing and buying something for myself. Love that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. Okay, one more financial question, and then we'll bring it home with a social emotional question. Sometimes people ask us, like, double-digit returns. What would you say are the safest or the most reliable double-digit return vehicles?
For me, it's going to have to go with real estate. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. We've seen it with momentum stocks like, Tesla, but really real estate and leverage, because that leverage is huge. So if you think, even if you're just keeping pace with inflation, if you're leveraged in the right way, that's going to give you huge returns.
And in the real estate, the general real estate bucket, are you also including things like REITs or also like equity, like mortgage lending funds? You know, I mean, I know some of those require larger minimum investments, but are you including that too? Or are you really talking about managing your own properties?
Public REITs, you're not going to see consistent returns like that.
Okay.
You know, maybe a private fund where you could see that with a developer. So something smaller. So we've done things like that where, you know, a large development company is building a project and we become a shareholder on that project and we can get, you know, returns in the double digits. But again, you're losing something. If you go into that private sense, you're losing that liquidity and you're also taking on risk of a single project versus the entire market.
Yeah.
So there's some risk with that. And same with real estate as well. Ask people in your area that have invested.
Yeah.
So not a realtor that has never owned an investment property, or not a friend who, you know, has watched prices go up and down, but someone who's actually in the market, and get their feel. Because even in a hot market, there's always properties that have lost money and made a lot of money. So as important as the market is, actually knowing that individual market is almost just as important.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I meant to say this earlier too. This is like, I love the concept of investing, or at least getting into investing in a specific class as an incentive to learn more about it. Like, I know that was my experience. Once I started investing in cryptocurrencies, I don't invest a ton, but enough where it's meaningful to me. Like, then I was like, all of a sudden I wanted to learn more about it. Right. Cause like you get emotionally invested and your money's on the line. It was the same thing with real estate. Like, as soon as I bought my first property, I was like, oh man, like now I'm like way more invested. I care a lot more about wanting to learn. Right. So I was, rather than watching Netflix one night, I was learning more about real estate. So I like that concept of like just getting in the game, because then it inspires you to want to learn more about that. You might realize that it's not for you, and you might realize you want to keep it going, but you wouldn't realize either of those if you didn't make that first step.
Yeah. And start, I mean, meet some people, go to a real estate club or things of that nature. Like, I wish I knew what I knew about real estate now 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Because just the way I invest is different. And it doesn't mean it didn't work out for us, but I would have made a lot different choices. And that's where someone could tell you, hey, that's a bad neighborhood. And you're like, well, why? Why would that be a bad neighborhood? Well, for these reasons. And this is a good investment, or that house, don't buy it. If you've never done it before, you might not recognize why one property makes more sense than another.
Yeah. Love that.
From an investment perspective.
Very cool. Well, I want to bring this here into the end zone. I would love for you to show, I know you just got if you're okay with it, got your first proof of the book. I'd love for you to share a little bit about the book, and also where people can find you if they want to learn more about what you're up to and what they can expect to find.
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned. So I just got the proof in the mail. So I am excited at this point, still showing it off. So this is The Golden Quest, and it's a graphic novel. It's funny because it's written for kids, but my hope is actually that adults will read it as well. And you can see like it's fully illustrated. And, you know, basically a young boy goes on, you know, he goes on a quest, and I mean, everything's reversed there, but he starts packing his bags and goes on a quest and learns a lot of these lessons. Wow. And again, the first lesson is based around that idea of mindset and what's important to you, and only buy the awesome stuff. That's the first lesson. So the book's called The Golden Quest, but you can find it at theawesomestuff.com.
Awesomestuff.com. Great. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And any personal website or anything on your own you want to put out there? If not, no worries.
Yeah, just the book. So yeah, theawesomestuff.com, and you can go there. You can learn more about the book. You can pre-order. It's going to be on Amazon and hopefully in, you know, Barnes and Noble, all the different bookstores as well. But you can always buy it from me directly. And as well, if anyone goes to theawesomestuff.com and wants to reach out to me personally, I mean, I love this stuff. I mean, the reason I'm in it is because I'm passionate about teaching these lessons. Yeah. And just really hoping to change the way we think about money and that whole mindset piece. I mean, we're missing it, and there's nothing wrong with more. We just need to first learn the first lesson, which is why first. Yeah. And that's really important. Yeah, I totally agree. I used to be
there's different spectrums. We were talking about this. Some people worship money too much. Other people vilify it too much. Right. And I come from the second camp, where I was always worked really hard and was good at managing my money from a just, expenses and saving and whatnot. But I always kind of vilified building wealth, right, for a variety of reasons. And it's taken me a long time to find a bit more of a middle ground, right, where, like you said in the very beginning, money is a tool, right? And if you're clear on how the tool can help lead to your own version of happiness, then it becomes really empowering in a positive way. If you're just chasing the dollar, right, or avoiding the dollar because of, different reasons that actually aren't serving you, it's not gonna work out well. So I appreciate that perspective a lot.
Yeah, it's that happy medium. And right now, like you said, we're the loudest voices are usually on one end of the spectrum. We don't have too many people right in the middle. It's all about the hustle, the side gig, and more, or we should have nothing. And
right,
making money off your money is evil, which also isn't right. So
right. Very cool. Well, I really appreciate your voice here in our group. I definitely would love to hear more about what you have to say. So thank you again. Really appreciate you being here, and we'll certainly be in touch about doing more of these.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I've enjoyed it. And again, like I said, if you go to the website, theawesomestuff.com, and want to reach out, I'm happy to, get in a conversation with anybody about this kind of stuff.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, David. Appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks.
Take care.
If you need